If you're a gay person, then you probably saw the first trailer in the new Nintendo Direct and got pretty excited. After all, it was an announcement for a brand new Fire Emblem game coming to Switch early next year. And as a bisexual person myself, I of course was very pleased to see a brand new Fire Emblem game before the Direct even really started. And I only felt better from there on out because unlike fans of other series, we didn't have to sit through 87 Square Enix announcements to get to our game. All jokes aside though, yes, we are finally getting a new Fire Emblem game after 3 years. And before you say, what about Three Hopes? I am well aware that Three Hopes came out just a little while ago, and I'm not saying any of this to hate on the game. I actually have it, I just haven't tried it yet, but I am very excited to do so. The reason why I say that it's been 3 years since an actual Fire Emblem game is because it's a Warrior spinoff. Yes, it's directly related to Three Houses, but we don't count Age of Calamity as a mainline Zelda game, do we? I didn't think so. But back to the game at hand, as cool as Engage looks, I'm not as hyped as I would like to be. And before anyone comes after me for saying this, let me explain first. The first huge main problem is that we don't have a theme song yet like we did in Fates and Three Houses. Like, what the fuck? How am I supposed to get copyrighted by Nintendo now? Damn it. Oh, and if you do not know what I'm referring to with the theme song thing, I'm referring to, like, in Three Houses we had reach for my hand, I'll soar away into... Okay, yeah, that one was a joke. I mean, a theme song would be cool, but if we don't have one, I don't care. Since you probably clicked on this video hoping to see my hopes for the game, let me reassure you that I will get to that in a bit, and that will actually cover most of the video, but I just want to talk about what I think of the game so far based on what we've seen in the trailer. And my current impression is, it looks really cool, the battle system looks as great as ever, and the graphics are great. But I have a few doubts and complaints. First of all, let's talk about the most obvious one, the protagonist. I generally am not one to complain about how the protagonist of a video game looks, especially when it comes to Fire Emblem, because I'm usually, focused on other stuff. Hell, I even looked past Three Houses, and that game had the literal definition of a blank slate as the protagonist. And I gotta say, it took some real dedication to look past that one, especially after the really cool character customization in Fates. But after seeing this game's protagonist, I think I owe Three Houses an apology, because at least Byleth didn't look like the fucking Pepsi logo. And before you tell me that I'm overreacting, don't even try it, because you haven't even seen overreacting yet, motherfucker. Me factually stating that the game's main character looks like an ugly-ass harem anime MC with that bubblegum swirl toothpaste is nothing compared to people bitching about the Direct. Like, don't get me wrong, I hated the fact that half of the damn presentation was Square Enix porting all of their shit in their catalog too, but stop acting like there's nothing good in the Direct, because holy shit, there was. But back to the topic at hand. After watching the Engage trailer a few more times, something was confusing me. Fire Emblem has had a great track record of some beyond good-looking protagonists. Both versions of Corrin from Fates, Ike from Radiant Dawn, Kron from Awakening, so on and so forth. Byleth may have been, well, but he wasn't horrible looking, and the female version was still super pretty. So how did we go from painfully normal looking protagonists at worst, to hot as fuck protagonists at best, to fucking this? It just didn't make sense. And that's when I found this. And then it all clicked. For those of you who don't know what VTubers are, first of all, I am very jealous of you, and second of all, they're pretty much the embodiment of unfunny neckbeard anime fan garbage. I'd rather not go into how stupid the whole thing is so I can stay on topic, but to sum it up, VTubers are these fucking monstrosities. So when I found out about how a VTuber character designer was the person who designed these new protagonists, it all came together, because only people behind shit like this can make something so goddamn ugly. But as stupid as the new protagonist designs are, it's not like they'll hinder the story or gameplay or anything. So we can just set that aside for now. But there are still a few concerns I have about the game. One of them being that I feel like it will rely way too much on the whole crossover gimmick they have going on. In case you don't know what I'm referring to, I'm talking about the whole ring that can turn you into Marth and possibly other characters thing. And it's not like this is the first time Fire Emblem's done something like this. Games like Fire Emblem Warriors and Fire Emblem Heroes, the mobile game, rely heavily on the characters from past games gimmick. But the difference between those games and a game like this is that this is being marketed as a new mainline game. And as much as characters like Marth are cool, I really hope they don't put all of their focus for the game into that gimmick, because one of the best parts of the mainline Fire Emblem games are the awesome and varied characters you see. And going from a game like Three Houses, which has some of the best Fire Emblem characters in the entire 30+ year lifespan of the series, to a game that relies on fan service for OG Fire Emblem fans would be extremely disappointing, at least in my opinion. But this is just an unfortunate possibility for the game at this point, and until something like that actually gets confirmed, that's all I have to say about it for now. The one last thing I have to say about this concern, though, is that I really hope the protagonist of the game has strengths other than his special ring or whatever, because if he doesn't, he will probably be the lamest RPG protagonist of all time. Anyways, to wrap up my thoughts on the game at this point and move on to my hopes for it, I'll share my third and final concern, at this point in time at least. And that concern is that I might not enjoy it coming directly from Three Houses. Don't get me wrong, Three Houses is not perfect. In fact, it's actually pretty far from perfect. Because as much as I would love to give it a 10 out of 10 score, a lot of the elements in the game are completely dog shit, and it becomes very noticeable after you've played it a lot. But don't get me wrong, I still love the game. But after Three Houses, coming back to the previous Fire Emblem formula will most likely not feel very enjoyable, at least for me. The reason why being that after having completed the game 5 times, because I played all 3 routes, but I played one of them 3 times, I am so used to the monastery system in the game that I don't think I could ever play a new game without something like it. This is a good sign for Three Houses, because it shows that it implemented a not totally perfect, but extremely enjoyable change to the series. But unfortunately, it's a bad sign for every Fire Emblem game coming after it. For example, Fire Emblem Fates is my first Fire Emblem game, and I loved it. Yes, the writing may have been terrible, the plot was ridiculous, and some of the characters were extremely one-dimensional, but I still very much enjoyed the game, especially when it came to the gameplay and supports. But if I went back to the game now, it would probably feel pretty underwhelming to me. Why? Because of the monastery. Whether you love or hate Three Houses, you have to admit that it changed the Fire Emblem series greatly, because not only did it add something fun to do even outside of battles and supports, it also made it a huge part of the game, which is why if this game doesn't have something like that, I'll probably have fun with it, but there won't be much to entice me into coming back to it. And as things are shaping up to be right now, it really doesn't look like we'll have something like that, and it's not the game's fault, because it wouldn't work. Three Houses worked because it took place in a school setting, but other Fire Emblem games don't, and we can't expect every future Fire Emblem game to be a school simulator. But if the game doesn't have something kinda like the monastery to replace it, it will, sad as this may sound, probably hinder my enjoyment of it. But right now, that's it for my complaints on the current state of the game. As I said earlier in the video, the battle system looks super fun so far, and it maintains that classic Fire Emblem style, and the art and graphics, aside from, are great too. So now, let me move on to my hopes for the game. Now, keep in mind, like my complaints, my hopes for the game are completely and entirely opinionated, and you don't have to agree with them. So with that said, let's start. First of all, I kinda touched on this earlier, but I hope that the game does not ride on the whole crossover aspect to avoid adding new characters or developing them. And like I said earlier, the second part applies to the main character too, because they better not let the fact that he can transform into other characters excuse not being a character himself. Things are looking up so far though, because the trailer showed us that this protagonist can actually talk. His character design may be completely atrocious, but I'm glad they ditched the whole silent protagonist thing. As for the other characters, there were a handful of new ones featured in the trailer, some of whom have actually already been named, But my concern doesn't exactly lie with how many characters we have that are new, but rather how many good new characters we'll have. One of the greatest strengths of Three Houses was its amazing cast of characters. Of course, the sheer amount of amazing characters, even when you don't count the non-student characters, is also extremely impressive, but we can't expect dozens upon dozens of stellar characters in every single game. But when a game has barely any memorable characters, it can really impact your enjoyment. Which brings me back to my original statement. I hope that the game does not use crossover characters to avoid making new and interesting ones. My second hope for the game is that it has, an actual story. They're marketing this as an actual mainline game, so it should have an actual mainline story. Normally, I wouldn't be concerned about this aspect of a Fire Emblem game, especially after the fantastic story and writing in Three Houses, but the crossover elements are concerning, to say the least, and it reminds me of Fire Emblem Warriors. Don't get me wrong, I really enjoyed Warriors, but unlike previous games in the series, they had to implement previous characters into the story somehow, which is hard to do. And the result? Three Houses has a thrilling and amazing story about war, betrayal, political ideology, whereas Warriors has, there's a dragon, and you have to kill it. You gotta defeat it. But the difference between Warriors and Engage is that Warriors was a non-canon spin-off, and Engage is an all-new mainline game in the series. I'm not expecting a story that changes the way games are looked at, but I'm at least hoping for a good story that isn't bogged down by crossover elements. My third hope for Fire Emblem Engage is that it will be fully voice acted, or at least 75% voice acted or something. After Three Houses was fully voiced, literally 100% voiced over, I genuinely don't think I can go back to just having to read character dialogue and cutscenes and special events and stuff. And what I actually know is that I will literally not be able to go back to non-voice supports. Whenever I go to YouTube to rewatch some of my favorite supports from Fire Emblem Fates, shut up, they're just so cute, okay? I can't help but notice that after having fully voiced supports in Fire Emblem Three Houses, going back to just reading dialogue with romantic music playing in the background is just really awkward. But as much as I want the game to be fully voiced, I seriously hope they don't spend too much of the budget on it, because hope number 4, cutscenes that are well animated and smooth. It probably feels like I've been dick riding Three Houses for the whole video, so let's talk about one of the many flaws of the game, the cutscenes. Three Houses voice acting was, to put it simply, near perfect. But I think that part of the reason why it was so good was because the dev team spent a huge chunk of the budget on it and did not leave much for the cutscene animation. Now, I'm not trying to generalize here. The game has some amazing cutscenes, and even some of the less than perfect ones are good in their own right. But when it comes to cutscenes like this that look like they're running at 6 FPS, it makes the game a little less enjoyable. And when your 2015 3DS game has better looking cutscenes than your 2019 Switch game, that is probably not a good sign. So what I'm about to say next may be pretty obvious, but I'll say it anyways. I really hope that Engage has some good and high quality cutscenes. And while we're on the subject of the quality of the game, my 5th hope is that Engage will have no map recycling, or at least map recycling that's cut to a minimum. This was another problem with Three Houses that became especially apparent when I played every route. Of course, I wasn't expecting a brand new map for every single battle, but once you've played this map for the 700th time, you start to get a little bitter. Since Fire Emblem Three Houses had 3 different routes to create maps for, I try not to get too upset about it, but it could have been better. But with a game like Engage, that from what I can tell only consists of one main story route, I think that maps would really not need to be recycled. Of course, that's kind of a lofty expectation, but I do hope that they seriously cut down on overusing maps. I only have 3 hopes left to get through now for this game, and all of them are kind of related in a way. In a way, meaning that they're all related to the supports in the game. I don't know if everyone would agree with me on this, but I personally think that support conversations are one of the most important parts of Fire Emblem. I'll admit it's mainly because I'm a sucker for mushy romance in my video games and anime, as you may have guessed when I revealed my addiction to Fire Emblem Fate supports,
But I also feel that it really helps to, like, further develop characters, and it reveals more about them. But I don't want to waste any more time, so I will jump right into my final 3 hopes. And by the way, I was not lying when I said they were all going to be about supports, so if you do not care about them, you can just stop watching now if you want. But thank you for watching up until now. Be sure to look out for future uploads, a lot of which will probably be related to Fire Emblem. And again, thanks for watching, and bye.
My 6th hope for Fire Emblem Engage is that they bring back the old support system in it. I'm talking C through S supports for every non-age gap and non-familial relations character pairing, and C through A, or at least B, supports for any 2 non-romantic characters. Oh, and none of that epilogue bullshit either, because like I said, this is bringing back the old support system. As much as I love 3 houses, let's just ditch the whole epilogue replacing S supports thing. Moving on, my 7th hope for the game is that it will include actually good gay representation. If you're a straight Fire Emblem fan, this probably is not a concern for you, and I'm not here to call you out, because if I was straight, I probably wouldn't care much either. But I am bisexual, and in a game where romance with a character of your choice is a huge aspect, I might want to marry a male character. And to be honest, I probably will, because Fire Emblem has some hot men. And this is exactly where the problems start. The first Fire Emblem game with supports was 2002's Binding Blade, but same-sex romance options weren't introduced until 2015 with Fates. And the gay options in Fates were, for lack of a better word, completely atrocious. In Fates, you were only given 1 gay same-sex marriage option and 1 lesbian same-sex marriage option. Neither of them were good. Niles, the gay male romance option, is creepy and sadistic as fuck, and Rajat, the lesbian romance option, has a disturbing obsession with you, and is also quite possibly evil. It really isn't hard to see why the same-sex candidates in this game got backlash from queer fans. The game that improved upon this was none other than 3 Houses, and it is miles ahead of Fates, and a huge step forward for the Fire Emblem series, is what I would say if that was true. Yes, 3 Houses was an upgrade from Fates, but really, I only mean that in the sense that some of the gay romance options you get are actually good. For gay males, the only romance option is Linhardt in the Black Eagles route. I married him in my Black Eagles playthrough, which I was very happy about, because he was honestly one of my favorite characters in the game, and I was more than willing to romance him. But the problem is that he is the only gay male romance option. As for the female gay romance options, you have Edelgard, Dorothea, Mercedes, Rhea, and Sothis. Edelgard, Dorothea, and Mercedes are all really good ones. Rhea and Sothis are not. Why? Because of massive spoilers that I will not reveal to respect the people who have not played 3 Houses and those who don't know what I'm talking about. But if you do know what I'm talking about, then yeah. So, in conclusion, for 3 Houses, we have 1 gay male romance option, and I'm not counting the 2 DLC ones because you should not have to pay extra for more gay representation, and 5 female gay romance options, 3 of which are good. Is this a step above Fates? Yes, but it is a very small step. You have 4 good queer romance options instead of 2 bad ones. Thanks for doing the bare minimum, Nintendo. Oh, and before any straight fans come into my comment section to tell me I'm being ungrateful, just hear me out really quick. Regardless of whether you play as the male or female protagonist, you are able to marry practically every character of the opposite sex. So I don't mean to sound rude here, but maybe think about the fact that you have the characters you want to romance handed to you on a silver platter, whereas us gay fans get our options drip-fed to us. So what does any of this have to do with my hopes for Fire Emblem Engage, you might ask? Simple. I want all legal characters to be romanceable regardless of their sex. Is that a lofty goal? Yes, it absolutely is. If Nintendo did this, there would probably be Fire Emblem fans who would start throwing temper tantrums and crying. But you know what? Those idiots will still buy the game regardless. So yeah, I hope that the Fire Emblem devs stop making more work for themselves by strictly limiting gay romance options, and just let you do your thing. I rest my case.
And for my 7th and final hope, I cannot believe I still even have to say this, but my god, please stop including weird-ass incest and underage supports. This should honestly just go without saying, but it's fucking gross. Please. But Fire Emblem is just a fictional game. Yeah, let me let you in on a little secret here. I do not give a single fuck. Yes, Fire Emblem is fictional, but that doesn't make wanting to marry a character who is your sister, or underage, or both any less weird and disgusting. Fire Emblem Fates is by far the biggest offender with this shit. In the game, you can marry your step-siblings. Oh, but they're not actually blood-related, they're not actually siblings. It's honestly concerning some of you guys don't realize how fucking harmful this viewpoint is. Because imagine being an adopted family member who goes online and has to read about how step-siblings aren't real siblings. Like, holy shit, guys. And by the way, let's say that step-siblings dating was for some reason not problematic. Fine. Why don't you try to explain then why you're fine with being able to marry your actual blood-related family members?
And while Three Houses cut down on the weird shit, it's not completely gone, and the biggest example of it not being completely gone is Sothis. Even without going into reasons that are spoiler territory, the fact that you are still able to support and marry Sothis is still fucking weird, because she is a child. Oh, but she's not actually a child, she's just reincarnated as one. Sure, but she still talks and acts like one, meaning you're trying to romance a character with the physical appearance and mannerisms of a child, you sick fucking freak. Oh, and by the way, even if this was perfectly legal, why the fuck would you want to marry Sothis anyway? She is quite literally not even real. Sure, none of the characters in the game are real, but in the game, Sothis is literally a fragment of your mind. She isn't even an actual person, no one else can see her. Even aside from Sothis and characters who are problematic romance options for spoiler reasons, there are still two offenders, Lysithea and Flame. I mean, a huge part of their personalities is that they act childlike and don't want to be seen as children, yet you can romance them, which is just, ew. I could go on and on, but my point is this game and future Fire Emblem games should stop putting the weird stuff in. What really pisses me off, by the way, is that you can't marry clearly gay characters like Ash and Claude, but you can marry a non-existent child? What kind of stupid fucked up logic is that? Anyways, I am very sorry for ending the video on such a ranty and sour note, but those are all of my thoughts on and hopes for Fire Emblem Engage. So far at least. If there's any new trailer out anytime soon, I'll be sure to make a video about that. Regardless, thank you all so much for watching, and if you're still here right now, thanks for sticking around up until this point. What are your thoughts on Fire Emblem Engage? Are you super excited, super disappointed, somewhere split down the middle like me? And let me know in the comments. And also, if you agreed with anything I said, or hated my opinion so much that it sparked an immense hatred for all bisexuals everywhere, then comment about that. And of course, if you're new to the channel, please consider liking, subscribing, share this video with a friend, and all that stuff. I currently upload monthly, on the 5th of every month to be exact, so if you want to see more videos covering games like Fire Emblem, as well as anime like, I don't know, the 2-episode long Fire Emblem 1996 OVA series,
Oh, but more!
then keep an eye out.